since we're using it to we're moving into the analytic parts more, we have customers that allow hours of calculation and they want to use it for hours of calculation. Yeah, but we started off with the idea that it should be very fast. Yeah, that's the basics of Tygron, and yeah, we're extremely happy you're using it in Barcelona. We're very honored. So that's why we give a lot of attention in how you use it. Can we learn from it? And we have a roadmap, and can we implement stuff based on your experience?
Okay, great.
Cool.
Well, so the purpose of today was to look in Joseph's project, and maybe you can give us a little background of the use case and where you stand, and then we can run through some questions, and Rudolf will be will be answering most of the questions probably.
Okay, perfect. Well, so as I said, I'm a middle way between a social scientist and a scientist. I don't know how to call it. And this is I'm using Tygron, as I said, to create the edible game, which is a game which is designed or which is thought to showcase how urban agriculture has different performances in a city, especially regarding the urban challenges, which are a framework from another European project, which is Eclipse. The main urban challenges defined by Eclipse are climate change resilience, water management, green space management, social justice, coastal resilience, green jobs, and I'm forgetting some of them, public health and public participation, that's all. And the idea is with the game and implementing urban agriculture elements to how cities better dealing with these urban challenges. So the first aim is to showcase the main urban challenges and how they can be measured through indicators. The second aim is to understand how different edible city solutions. Edible city solutions is how urban agriculture initiatives are called in a designated project. So how edible city solutions address urban challenges, and some aims more related to decision games and to the stakeholders in the cities. The first one is to empathize with other stakeholders in the city and their conflicting interests. So some stakeholders will be interested in green jobs, other maybe will be interested in reducing the traffic intensity, I don't know. So regarding their interests and show what their interests are and how to empathize with each other. And finally, very related, to reach consensus about the strategies to implement edible city solutions with the city team is like a group of stakeholders involved in the cities of the project, and they will be in charge of implementing the edible city solutions, so to reach consensus among them about the strategies. For this, I was looking into some research about designing games and designing serious games, and I decided to use a mix of frameworks. One framework is about the loops in games. So, very fast, this is the player's mental model. So what I think about the game, then I try to interact with the game, and the game rules told me what the game can really do. And this changed my mental models, and again, a new loop. And this is the way I get familiar with the game, going through these loops again and again. Another framework is the mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics, iterative framework, which divides the game in mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics. The mechanics are basically the rules of the game, what the designer does. The dynamics are the interaction between the rules and the mechanics of the game and the users, the players. And finally, the aesthetics is the perception of the player regarding the game. So I think this bidirectional perspective is interesting to design, because after each game session, you can evaluate the aesthetics and redesign the mechanics to fulfill the expectations of the users. And finally, a more formal framework, which is I don't know the full name, I don't remember, but is a framework that guides you step by step through all the steps necessary to define a serious game, which is identification, analysis of the situation, the purpose of the serious games, and which are the learning goals, who are the users, what learning methods you want to achieve or use, which game typology, it's a multiplayer game, it's a single player game, it's online game, it's a board game, the serious content you want to introduce in the game's mechanics, which is the rules and the objects and the environment of the game, the data feedback to users, so which parts of the data are used to give feedbacks to users, so providing learning. The game evaluation layer that is used to see if players are learning something, because we are talking about a serious game, so players are supposed to learn something, and the user's feedback. And all of this information is used to the iterative design, going back and review the previous steps to achieve what you want in the serious game. So this is what more I try to use. I'm trying to use to define to set up the serious game. And now we are looking into the mechanics of the game. So the game, I divided the game in 3 levels, following more or less the climate game, because I think it's a clever solution. So with the first level with a few actions and simple assignments for players, just because the players getting familiar with the game. A second level, which I call land scarcity, because the main storyline of this level is that the plots are becoming scarcer in the city, so players have to start to build gardens on the top of the roof and in green walls. So in the first level, they are only actions that are available are new functions on the ground, and in the second level, upgrades are activated. And in the level 3, which I call Let's Work Together, all the players have the same assignment, and more actions are available, more potent actions, to say in some way, like demolishing buildings. Demolishing buildings, it's only activated from the 3rd level, and they are supposed to work together because all of them have the same assignment. So it's a consensus level. Okay, I created, we decided in a focus group with ICRA and other partners to create 9 characters to be played by the players. One is the municipality, the neighbors organization, which represents all the neighbors in the city, but organized neighbors. An organization of a small and medium enterprise dedicated to urban agriculture, a consumers cooperative, the social third sector, which is normally involved in social gardens and this kind of initiative, a conservationist NGO, educational sector, which it's mainly involved in building school edible gardens, a tourism promoter, which he can barely do actions, but he has a lot of money to give money to the other players, and the inhabitants, which is a non-playable character, but it's the owner of most of the buildings in the city. 8 indicators regarding the 10 urban challenges that I told are created in the game. 2 of them are predefined by Tygron, which are urban heat island and water storage capacity. Okay, and the other 6 were created by me. The first one is green accessibility, which is the percentage of houses within 100 meters of public green areas, which I had problems with that, but thanks to you, now it's working properly. Yeah. I had a bit trouble with min grid value and max grid value, and because I think I'm a bit dyslexic with these kind of things. Another indicator is green justice, which is the amount of green per capita in the city, but the scores only takes the score of the neighborhood with the lowest score. So you have to improve the less favorable neighborhood to improve the general score of the indicator.
I like
that. Yeah. I try first with the Gini index and more complicated things, but at the end I finish with that because I think it's simple, straightforward, and easy for players. Another indicator is people that is involved in urban agriculture, mainly volunteers that are involved in communitarian gardens. This is a percentage of inhabitants in any neighborhood. Green jobs, which is barely the same, but instead of volunteers, they are employees working in urban agriculture. And the percentage is regarding workforce, not inhabitants. NO2 absorption, which takes advantage of the NO2 indicator that are already calculated in Tygron regarding NO2 emissions by traffic cars, by traffic intensity. But I also trying, this is not quite definite because I'm having problems with defining it, but the idea is calculating the NO2 that is absorbed by urban green and the NO2 that is emitted by traffic, and know the proportion between the NO2 absorbed and the NO2 emitted. I'm in contact with some people in ICRA that is expert in this field, so we are trying to figure it out how to calculate it. And finally, the food sovereignty indicator, which is the percentage of food consumed in the city that is provided by urban agriculture, considering the food requirements of inhabitants, which are calculated by the FAO. Okay, that's all about indicators. And a personal budget for any character. This way we can activate the request subsidies and these kind of actions in the game. Because I think if the personal budget is not activated, the request subsidy is not working. Am I right?
Well, you don't notice any effect, basically. Because there is no pile of money to add more money to.
Okay. Yeah. Now, okay. I'm a bit confused about the budget indicator, so maybe we can go deeper later.
Of course. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. For the game, I created 13 new urban agriculture functions, basically divided in these four attributes. One attribute is or communitarian or professional, that is run by volunteers or a business-based garden. Another is the technology. It can be soil-based or hydroponics. Another is the structure on the ground, rooftop, or a vertical garden. And the final one is vegetables, that is horticulture, or fruit trees, an orchard. So combining these four factors, we create basically 6 types of urban agriculture. But I had to create a lot more functions because for rooftops, basically. So warehouse with hydroponic rooftop, warehouse with communitarian garden, warehouse with professional rooftop garden, warehouse with professional hydroponics. So it's a lot of functions for any building. We come back later to this type of upgrades. Now, I found a problem with implementing vertical gardens on Tygron. Basically because I don't know, I don't think it's not possible to implementing a vertical garden on a single wall. Because I look in the forums and I ask it, and I see that the way is converting the color of the walls into green. But this is for the 4 walls, not for just one wall, which is the normal case in a vertical garden. And another issue is how I can prevent that green walls being constructed in walls that are between buildings. You know, because when you paint, when you upgrade a building with the 4 walls being a vertical garden, some of the walls will be touching another building, so it doesn't make sense. I created 5 new attributes related to the needs of the indicators. One is the absorbed NO2, which is still under construction. I don't know if it will be per year or per day, per hour, per second. I don't know. We are going into it. The people involved, which is person per square meter, jobs created, the same, job per square meter, the food production, which is kilogram per square meter per year, and distance zone for public green areas, which is meters. This is the 5 new attributes that I created. And I'm using also 6 overlays, which most of them are already predefined by Tygron, which one is heat effect stress, which is already working, thank you. The other is NO2 emissions. So this is predefined by Tygron to know. This is to inform players where are the NO2 concentrations, because only vegetation which is in contact with some amount of concentrations will be able to absorb NO2. So if you construct a garden where NO2 concentrations are 0, this garden is not absorbing NO2, so it won't count for the indicator. Another is overlay with the property. Another is an overlay with the distance to the closest green area. Another is a food production overlay, which is the attribute overlay, an attribute overlay, where is food being grown. And finally, a constructed overlay to make easier to find the empty plots when you are playing.
Cool.
Okay, this is a proposal that came to my mind when I was working with upgrades. So because now Tygron only allows to upgrade one function by another. Yeah, I'm right. And so I had to create a new function for any type of building that I wanted to be improved for the players, to be upgradable. So this is a lot of functions, because if you have, I don't know, six different types of gardens and 6 buildings, these are 36 functions, 36 new functions to be implemented on Tygron. A lot of work. And I was wondering if it won't be possible to use the attributes to upgrade buildings. That is, you can create an attribute which is rooftop to be equal to 1 for these buildings that will be upgradable with a rooftop. And then when you activate the upgrade, all the buildings with the rooftop equal to 1 change their attributes. I don't know, I'm explaining not very well, but so this will be more or less like this syntax. I don't know if it's possible because I don't know the architecture of Tygron, but I think it will make easier the work with upgrades, because I would only have to create one attribute for all the buildings I want to upgrade, and then adjust the attributes I want to change in these buildings.
I understand what you mean. I'd love to circle back to that after we've done your main questions.
Okay, thank you. So I continue. We are on the final slide right now. So this is doubts that came out through all the process of the design. Do you want I explain all of them, or we are going one by one? What do you prefer?
I think each question is quite straightforward.
Nice.
So
let me take notes. So.
So if and when we go through this slide, it's a matter of me basically just reading the question and immediately giving you a very concise answer to it.
Perfect. So your turn.
So if this is the one that we want to start at, that'll give me 7 questions already right at the start of my speaking time. So that's good for my metrics or something. Is it possible to configure the height of rivers? Actually, this one might need some extra clarification. When you say the height of rivers, do you mean like the water level within a river?
Yeah, because some squares of the city are flooded by the rivers at this time.
Can you show me an example?
Yeah, I don't know if it happens in this section of the city. Let me see. No, it happens here. But right. I can load another project.
Oh, that's okay. Keep this one open.
Yeah, I can open another. Yeah, that's right.
No, because based on what I see or based on what we discussed, we can probably understand it. Is it that in real life those banks would be flooded this time of year or any time, or is it that our visualization shows them as flooded?
No, the visualization shows them as flooded.
Okay.
Yeah, here I can show you if you want. I think Girona Test 2 is the project.
Because the Tygron visualization shows water or not, based on the underlying terrain type.
Yeah.
And broadly speaking, there are two terrain types. There's land and there's water. And there are variations of land and variations of water, but those are the two most important ones. And when there is water, there's automatically drawn over it a visualization of water. If you have a specific place in your project where you say, oh, Tygron has created water here, but there shouldn't be, then what you could do is just manually draw in a strip of land in that location.
So here.
Yeah.
This square, it's supposed to be on the river, not through the river. The river is not going through, but under this square.
I can see what's happened data-wise, I think, because we have a data source that says, oh, we have things here. We have a data source that says, oh, there's water here. And someone has probably put an underground canal as this is a waterway, which our software then happily copies because it's the data we're getting.
Yeah, yeah.
So it should probably be sufficient to say draw where you click on terrain and then open land.
So I draw open land here.
Yeah, and then you could just draw in this is supposed to be land rather than water. Fine tuning it might be a bit more tricky, but this is the basis.
More or less like this?
Yeah. Yeah, wait a few seconds. There we go.
Okay, nice.
There's a bit of fine tuning involved. Look, for example, at the water depth attribute of water, because the terrain is heightened and lowered by that amount of meters. When it changes from water to land or from land to water, using that you can fine tune it. But this is
water depth here.
Yeah.
If I change that, the water level is going down.
Well, this means that if there's land and you draw water in that place, then at that time the land will be lowered by that amount of meters.
Okay. So it's not about the surface level, but the subsurface level.
Let me put it this way. If you have land and you would draw water right now, you would get a pit 3 meters deep with water. Okay. If you then change this value to 2 and you turn that water back into land, then that pit of water is turned back into land and raised 2 meters. So what you're left with is your terrain and then a pit 1 meter deep without any water.
Okay. So if I would change the level of the river, because this is a very small river and here looks higher.
Yeah.
So I have to draw land and then water again on changing the water level, the water depth. So I draw open land here and then I change the water depth and draw water on top again.
If it's supposed to be, I understand it's supposed to be a very short. Yeah. Then your best solution would be to basically dry the entire river and then redraw the river more thinly.
Okay.
We can dive into a lot of details with that, but I think when you start trying it, when you start experimenting with it, it will become easier and clearer.
Yeah, no, I know how to do it. Yeah. Actually, in the other project, this river didn't exist, so I draw it.
That looks very tidy.
Yeah, it is supposed to be the same river, so.
All right, so that's one question down.
Nice. Let's go to the second one.
Yeah, integrate a survey at the beginning or at the end of the game. That will be tricky. I'm going to say. Tygron software was developed with indeed the serious gaming aspect in mind, although we have moved our capabilities more to calculating long and complex models as well. But you can still notice and still use the core functionalities of it being a game. And the way that was devised was that it's a game that is played in person, people sitting around the table, each with their own screen, with a facilitator there to, well, facilitate the progress of the session. People interact with each other verbally or via interactions via the game, but the facilitator manages everything at a higher level. And that includes presentations beforehand, as well as questionnaires and things like that. We do not have an integrated way of providing presentations as expensive as, for example, a PowerPoint, or as a facilitator could do in person. And the same would go with questionnaires and surveys.
Yeah, it was a minor question indeed, because I know I can use Google Forms to send a survey after the game, but it was only, if it can be into Tygron, why not? But yeah, it's a minor question.
It's I would strongly recommend doing it out of bounds, as we would say. It is possible to add like a panel to the world, which opens to an external Google form where people can enter their data. But to do that very tidily will take a bit of an effort. So my recommendation would be doing it out of bounds.
Okay.
But if you're really interested in integrating it, you can look at using web panels.
Yeah, web panels. Yeah. I was thinking on that. Yeah.
And then just the URL of the Google form as the.
And I can trigger a panel from the facilitator.
Not for other stakeholders.
Okay.
That's the tricky bit. So
the panels are only used to be fixed on some point of the game, and the players phone them. Yeah.
So you have to instruct the players to open the panel themselves and to do the question.
Okay. So you cannot trigger panels like messages.
No.
Okay. And I can send a link with a message.
Yeah.
Message allow HTML code or not?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
If message are only plain text, or they allow HTML?
I believe that they are plain text, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, but I look it.
Yeah.
No problem. Nice.
All right. Give land for free without a buying request.
Yeah.
Giving land for free, yes, that's possible.
Yeah,
but
when you have a buy request,
it will always have to be accompanied by a buying request, because that also forms the definition of what transfer is going to happen.
Yeah.
So at this time, you still need to start up that transaction. What you might be able to do is set the default land price to 0.
Ah, that's interesting.
Let's see if I remember where that.
Maybe it's a global.
You have your current situation, and if you move over the terrain button, you get a drop down, and one of the options is change ground prices.
So I have to stop the simulation.
Yeah, because it's editing one of the rules.
Change ground prices. Okay, yeah. And now set to 0.
Yeah.
Okay.
That by default, when people initialize a
transaction,
they always get one of those screens where they can input how much they want for it, and that value will by default be 0 now.
Okay. I will think about this. Yeah. Okay, nice.
The max value target in the heat indicator.
The heat indicator has a max value target that I don't know where it come from.
Depending on the underlying overlay, I believe you've used the simplified UNESCO overlay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It basically it performs a very simple calculation with a few very basic metrics on features in the world. Basically, effectively averaging out heat effects in the world and coming to a conclusion of this place is so many degrees hotter, so many degrees colder. And the heat indicator functions by saying this neighborhood on average must not be much so many degrees hotter than would be normal.
Yeah.
That is a bit of a vague description. That's because the calculation stacked like that is also kind of vague, which can help preventing bogging down into details. So for a player session, it might be a good thing. But I understand that makes it a bit more difficult to determine exactly where a specific value comes from. But it's effectively an averaging effect of the various heat intensities in the world. It's a tiny bit more complicated than that, but effectively it's an averaging of the heat values in the world.
Okay.
Per neighborhood.
So it's not coming from a query, the max target value. It's a constant value. As you can see here, there is no request.
It refers to the current E12?
Yeah, to the well, current or maquette.
The current, and in that cell it's, yeah, here it's indeed set to a fixed value.
Yeah, so this is why I was wondering where it came from, because it's the same value for all the cities in the world.
Is this value also used then to determine the target?
Yeah.
Or the score?
I guess so.
That uses the score, that uses score and active.
No, maybe it's not. Oh, yes. No, this is the target. This is no. So it's not used by the indicator.
I'm not sure where the value comes from.
Yeah, here in the score it is used.
There's a current value, there's a target value. That's odd. I will have to look into that and come back to that later.
Okay, and so by the way you are exploring that, in the wiki regarding this indicator, and you have a reference that I can't find anywhere about their wiki or something like that in wiki Tygron. Yeah. Tygron UNESCO model. It's a PDF that it's open. Let me see. No, sorry, we just a bit overline now. Calculations. Maybe this is. Live on good. Yeah, this reference here. I couldn't find anywhere. Vervec 2010. It's where this table came from.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting.
It's possible that reference slipped out when this document was created, because it was originally we have like a full reference manual for the climate game, which includes references to source material, and this datasheet was extracted as a detail from there, and I'm going to send you the link in the chat. There we go. Oh, you already found it. So there it is at the second to last page, I believe, at the bottom for Bake.
Okay, here.
That's the one.
Okay, nice. Wow, it's in Dutch. Well, I cannot read, but at least I can reference.
Yeah. I understand the importance of proper references.
Yeah. Okay, nice.
All right. So for the max target value, I'll have to look into that, where that comes from, if it's still relevant, and I'll come back to you to that at a later time.
Thank you.
How to avoid that players spend more money than they have?
Yeah, like a restriction that you cannot spend more money than you have. For instance, you have 1,000 euros. It's the only one you can spend.
Yeah. At this time, it is not possible to restrict that.
Okay.
I will be honest. In the long time ago, it used to be possible, but we overhauled our calculation system to allow for more complicated, more expensive calculations, and also for more user-defined calculations, which has its great obvious benefits. But due to that, we cannot say before a calculation whether a certain action is possible, including in terms of budget, because the action can have direct or indirect consequences on the budget. And it's especially those indirect consequences of which we say we'll only know that after the action has been performed.
Okay. So I believe I need a seminar on how budget works.
I will say that you're not the first one to ask this since this functionality has been changed. I'm making a mark of that. But at this time, it's not possible to actually restrict this. There is the opportunity for the facilitator to keep an eye on this facet and to emphasize that when players exceed their budget, they also do not get a final score, because that is something that is still implemented. If a player goes below 0, their total score will be at most 0.
Okay.
So there's a
I didn't get it. So the score of the budget indicator is constraining all the score of the player.
Yeah. If you open your Tygron again.
Yeah, of course.
You have your list of indicators at the top. If you switch to the multi-stakeholder perspective, yeah, you have your heat indicator. Now imagine you have like 7 indicators at the same time, each with a different score. And at the very right, you have the progress indicator. And that is basically a summation or an averaging, a weighted average of all the scores on all the other indicators. It is a net total of how well you are doing.
Okay.
The budget indicator is also just an indicator. It computes a certain score, and that score is also taken into account for your progress. If you save all of the money you want or need to save, then you get a lot of extra points. If you do not save any money, but you're just spending your entire budget, but exactly that, then you don't get any extra points, but whatever, the rest might be a lot better. But when your budget goes below 0, then the progress indicator will know that and will say you are not getting a score. It will score you 0 or even less, depending on what your total would eventually be.
And this is already implemented on Tygron. So the total score goes to 0 at the same moment that the players spend all the money.
When the budget goes below 0, then the progress indicator will give you at most a score of 0. And if you're doing terribly because you're going down with your budget or not fixing other indicators, it might even be negative.
Okay, nice.
But it will be at most 0%.
And by the way, we are here. Which is how the target for the budget indicator works? So the amount of money that the stakeholder needs to earn. But yeah, I don't know how a stakeholder earn money in Tygron. I only see ways to spend money.
Yeah, earn might be a bit of a misnomer in this description, because it it's better to consider it as having money left over. There are municipalities that spend money, and you have like project developers and corporations that want to make money. But for that second group, earning is the right number because they want to build something and get a hefty return on investment. And they do well when they make large amounts of profit in excess of what they started with. But for a municipality, it's just important not to spend too much. So what the description should be is how much money should they have left over, or should they finish with?
Okay. So if I set to 0, it's the aim is not becoming in negative numbers.
Yeah, but 0 might be a bit tricky. And I think reasonably you could make the argument that if a stakeholder managed to get great scores, but uses all their budget, and another stakeholder manages to get the same great scores, but also has $1 million left over in the bank, then that second stakeholder will probably have tackled the problem more effectively.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, I get it. Okay.
What I usually do when I'm in doubt of what to enter here is to enter here the starting budget, or the amount of money that the stakeholder would have received anyway. That does make it nigh impossible to get a net total score of 100%, but it is a perfectly fair way to make sure that the more money you have left over, the higher your score is.
Okay. Okay, I'll think about it. I get how it works, and I have to think how to implement with the game.
Yeah.
So if I want to take the money into account or not, okay, nice.
Yeah. An Excel debug in the middle of a session. Unfortunately, that is currently not possible. The debug functionality is specifically implemented in our editor environment.
Okay.
And that hook is simply not available in the single and multi-user sessions. Again, you are not the first one to ask this, so I will also make a note.
Okay, so to get the data, it's only possible to get the score progress of each indicator.
Yeah,
in the log session, there are the scores, I think.
There is a middle ground, and I'll share my screen real quick.
Okay.
There we go. If you're facilitating a multi-user session,
yeah,
you have your regular buttons like start the session, stop the session, increment the level, those sort of things. You also have team-specific screens showing the status of the team and indeed the scores. You also have an interface for the beamer. If you have like a big room that you're working in, I'm making hand gestures. If you have a room that you're working in with a big screen and you want to show an overview of all the scores to all the players, we have a beamer functionality. You can hook a beamer application to it, and the results can via that interface be displayed onto the beamer screen.
Yeah, I was trying how it works. It's nice, the beamer. Yeah.
That's good to hear. So we have the indicator screens, you have the score screens, and those are all easy to understand. There's also the opportunity to show a web view screen. And a web view is basically any panel or indicator in your project. So
like example, the ones are open in the editor when you click to open on web browser. It's like the same.
Effectively, yeah. And same as when the player opens their, in this case, heat stress indicator. This is the table they see. So you can get this information from the facilitator functionality. So you can select a web view screen, you can select which thing you want to see, and you get this same content. And you can do so with preview, which only shows it here. You don't have to actually switch to it, moving the entire beamer screen so that everyone can see this.
Okay.
But at the very least, this will help getting the indicator information.
Yeah, I can copy paste that.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, and from current and target is easy to to extrapolate the values, the real values. So yeah, that's nice.
It will probably help a lot. Depending
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
complexity of the indicator, there might be some intermediate information missing, like parking indicator, how much is above ground, how much is underground, stuff like that, whatever.
But I'm thinking I could create an indicator with all the information I would like to download.
Yeah.
And not be available for the players, so it will be invisible. And I could use to download all the data I want.
Yeah, that would work. And it would probably be best to then implement that not as an indicator, but as an Excel panel.
Ah, yeah, right, an Excel panel, yeah.
Because that completely avoids the risk of having it appear for any of the stakeholders at any time.
Nice, an Excel panel, yeah, that's right. And I can view that with the Beamer.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, an Excel panel is really nice. And yeah, now I'm thinking it's the possibility to interact among Excels. So I can construct an Excel using the data from the other Excels.
Only one step deep. We basically group our Excels into two groups, those which update information and those which don't. You've already worked a bit with Excel and with TQL, so you know you have the select statement, which pull data from our software.
Yeah.
We also have update statements, which write data to our software.
Yeah, I know.
So then obviously, the next step would be thinking you can have one Excel which does an update on, for example, a global value or an attribute. And you have a different Excel which reads that same global or that same attribute to use in its further calculations. And then expanding that imagination, that in Excel can also write something, and then the next Excel can pick up on that, etc., for an infinite chain.
Ah, okay. But they have to go through the Tygron platform.
But we cannot do an infinite chain. We can only do two of them.
Ah, okay.
So we have one stack of Excels which updates an indicator or updates anything in the project. Those are calculated as part of a calculation step. The results are written to the software, and then the second stack of Excels is calculated, those which do not themselves update any other information. And they can thus make use of the information provided by that first stack of Excels.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
But that's...
Don't worry about that. It was just a curiosity. No, but I think I can create an Excel with all the carries, with all information I need to download, and use this Excel panel to download all the data in the middle of a session.
Yeah. From a developing standpoint, I am all for reusability, but to keep optimum control over what kind of data you're getting in that final result, I would recommend basically re-implementing it all in one single Excel for the purposes of that output.
Nice.
Just so you can be sure that there isn't going to be a mismatch in the future somewhere where one Excel is grouped in the other group and you lose that connection effectively.
Okay. Nice.
But I like the question. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you can show the presentation again.
Okay.
Hooray. How to solve when satellite imagery is not available.
This happened in this project. If I go to the 2D perspective, you can see here there are a lot of missed data.
Yeah. It's a bit unfortunate, but a couple of days ago, if I recall correctly. There was I wouldn't say an issue, but there was there was an issue with our connection with the Esri satellite imagery database, which happens very infrequently, but sometimes they update their images or whatever, and we have a brief period in which we get these kinds of results. Unfortunately, we do not have an option available with which you can overwrite these satellite images. So the option that would be remaining would be to load in the project area again. So to create a new project.
Okay, so I just was unlucky.
Yeah, I'm afraid you were just unlucky.
Okay.
But if I can see your project correctly, you do not have all that much geographical data loaded in, not much specific work in the spatial environment. You do have some with the river and things, not a lot.
Actually, all the buildings are created by me in a geospatial using data from Cadastro. Cadastro. But yeah, I have the geospatial. I have to only import, or maybe I can export that and import again with all the functions.
That would possibly also work. See which route works best. But the thing I want to recommend is you can make this project into a template, something that was hinted to earlier already. Because if you make this project a template, then you can use this project as a template to load in a new project area.
Yeah.
And when you do so, all non-spatial information, such as what stakeholders you have, what indicators you have, what actions you have, the definitions of your functions, will all be transferred to your new project.
Yeah, I know it. Actually, this is created using a first template of the game.
Ah. Well, in that case, it's easy.
Yeah. So it's not a big deal to create a new project. Actually, this is only for testing, so it's not a final project. So it will be destroyed in any time. So yeah.
Many times.
Yeah. So yeah, I just was wondering if it was possible to import a orthophoto, but yeah, it's not possible. So no worries.
Unfortunately not. There's a lot of data we can correct after the fact, but the satellite imagery, unfortunately, isn't one of them. Implementing a vertical garden on a single wall is not visually possible in the 3D world. Yeah, in fact, there are two challenges here: how to visualize it and how to calculate them.
Yeah.
As a bit of a background, the way our calculation core works is through vector data and polygons and grids and things like that. So really 2D spatial magic. That means that basically all of our calculations are designed and optimized to work based on polygons. Always 2D shapes. Working with the edges of those shapes is not something that we currently do with our calculations. We haven't designed our software for it specifically, which means that if you want to calculate something like that, basically the results would have to be approximated because we can't work with the walls directly.
Yeah, actually, I figured out the proxy using these calculations.
Yeah, so that's a reasonable proxy in terms of calculating an amount of circumference for a square building. And you've probably already noticed that as buildings get more rectangular or even like a U shape and things like that, and that proxy will start to waver, which is tricky.
I didn't think too much about this.
That said, there might be some ways to approximate the amount of wall that is available for being green. But I have to start by saying it's not possible to then pick out a single wall and say only this wall should be green if possible. It will always be all the walls of the entire building. So that's one thing. Then we come to, okay, how can we approximate how much wall is exposed to be available for a vertical garden? Because as you already hinted in this slide, you can't have two buildings right next to each other and then have like watermelons growing in between them.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So how much wall is free, basically? And I've thought of a slight approximation of how something like that could work. It is not perfect, but it might help working towards it. Let's see if we can do a quick screen share again. You should be able to see a small project. I was testing things with water bins and I was like, oh wait, I can just put some buildings here and test this out for you real quick. What I have here are two buildings. One building which I've colored the roof green, which I intend to be a building of which we could say, okay, this building has vertical gardens on its walls. And one building around that, let me highlight for a bit, there we go. So one building around that, which is just another building with no particular walls. And what I figured is what you want to do per building. We can't look at directly the walls and see what they're adjacent to, but what we can do is configure the building to have a small distance zone around it, like so. This is not particularly small, but I hope it gets the point across a bit. So what this is this is just basically a distance highlight from this building outward. Right on the building, the distance is 0. Somewhat further away from the building, the distance is 5, and that's why I've stopped measuring the distance, and then it stops. What you can do with this is say how much of such a distance zone is available in the world, and you would get an amount of land size which is equal to the surface of this entire red and green block that you're seeing here. And you can then subtract all of the space which is on the red and green surface, but which also has a building on it. So if I were to say, and due to the grid size, it's an approximation, but bear with me. If I say I want the land size of this grid, of this distance zone, and I only want it where there's actually a value, then this distance zone, this red and green area, is calculated to be about 2,900 square meters. But that includes not just this clear land, it also includes the building, and it also includes the building that's around it. But what we can also say is we want the lot size, which overlaps with that same distance zone with a certain distance. And when we do that, we get a different result. We get the amount of lot size that's over here, excluding the area that's over here. So we have the value of this red and green area of the distance zone, and we have the value of the amount of that distance zone that is filled with buildings. If you subtract one from another, what you're left with is the amount of distance zone that's in the clear. And that amount of distance zone that's in the clear is also an approximation of how much of the wall is actually free. It's a method that will require some tweaking and configuring the right grid size to properly approximate the amount of square meters. And you'll probably have to think of a way to discount things like roads. But this would be a way to get some approximation of how much of the wall of a building is freestanding.